This time Albright with an AV Network Tech Talk, talking about AV over IP and control rooms with my buddy, Mr. John Story from DataPath. Welcome, sir.
Hello there, Tim. Nice to be here.
Nice to see you again. John's the CTO, Chief Technology Officer over there. He and I have spent a number of times together. John, let's talk for a second, though, about control rooms and network operation systems, centers and stuff like that. Not only just the last 12 months, obviously with COVID, things have happened and things have evolved, but really over the last 4 or 5 years, that system and those spaces have really kind of evolved as technology has advanced. What have you seen happen in that space when it comes to the evolution of the control room?
Definitely, they have changed over the years, and if you control rooms have always been about bringing together a lot of information, lot of that visual information, so that operators can do their jobs and make collective decisions. That bit hasn't changed. It's the sort of technology that's underpinning that's made changes. So, as an example, it all maybe started as that sharing of information is all about a large single wall, and the act of sharing is about being in the room. What's sort of moved on is, as media's become more routable, then the sources are more available in different ways. Screen technology has improved, so the pixels at an operator's desk has gone from a sort of fairly standard, I can just monitor one thing at a time, to almost a personal video wall where they want that media there just as much as they want it on the wall. And so effectively it's evolved into more of a multiple distributed points where the information can be shared, consumed, and collaboration has very much increased. And as you say, COVID has maybe even lessened the impact of being in the room. It's very much more about how do we manage this without necessarily all being huddled together.
Yeah, those evolving and those changing needs. How has that changed the solutions that folks like you and other technology companies have offered and brought to market?
So underpinning a lot of that is, as I said, the way that media becomes routable when you consider AV over IP. That's been a big game changer. And when you add to that that key essential of operators KVMing into sort of remote sources, if that's on that same IP network, then you can start to integrate all of these things. Add in a workstation has got more pixels, so it's more like a little video wall anyway. And what we're really saying is that the solution has become, if you like, a software application to manage and control all of that integration. Rather than a sum of separate parts, the solution is now software that sort of integrates all of those parts. That's sort of how I would sort of summarize it.
Isn't that where we're going, though? I mean, that's the thing is that, I shouldn't have asked a yes or no question because I shouldn't do that.
No.
But that's kind of where we're headed, though, right? It is software. Yes, certainly there are hardware pieces that all of us have to.
There's hardware underneath it always, but
software is kind of where we're going, though, right? Because that allows you guys, you to evolve and to constantly update and push the envelope without a whole lot of risk involved. Yes, it's software. Yes, you guys have to pay the programmers and stuff like that, but it's not like a hardware play where there are 18 months, 24 months of R&D, and if it doesn't work or if it doesn't, if it doesn't take off or have the traction that you guys think it will, then you've got a lot of money, millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions, dumped into R&D that you have to somehow recoup. Software, though, is a little bit less risky in that, right?
Well, I wouldn't say software is free, though, Tim.
No, not free. No, don't misunderstand there. But the development time is quicker, right? And the turnaround time is quicker, and you guys can push the envelope a lot better and a lot more efficiently.
Yeah, I think it basically does allow you to explore what the limits of the hardware. There's usually hardware there, and we've had to develop hardware to underpin some of the things that we felt the software could offer, but needed a little bit of help. So. There's a mix, I think, but yeah, you're right. And networks give you that sort of soft control that allows a lot of this stuff to happen, and so you can think of different ways. And just because something physically is over there, it doesn't mean it has to be displayed over there. You can bring it wherever it's needed, and that's a big change. And yet, networks and all of that, it can get horribly complicated incredibly quickly. So software is about making that complexity go away, making it seamless, making it feel as easy as a fixed function bit of hardware that just does what it does. So
Yeah.
it's a nice mix is what we're trying to achieve here. And DataPath's quite unusual in the sense that we've got all the spectrum of development going on. We've got hardware development, we've got sort of application software, we've got driver development. So we do the full stack. So we can sit back and think, how does that map onto that stack of technology? That really helps us to be able to sort of do new things.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the fact that just because a device is over there doesn't have to be displayed over there. That's something that you guys and other companies have had to really leverage the last year during COVID and during this pandemic. Talk for a second about some of the evolutions and some of the advancements DataPath has made over the last year because of the pandemic.
Okay. Well, certainly the sort of last year, we've not been on furlough, so we have been busy. We've had our heads down. And really, we've taken that chance to bring a lot of this R&D together, and we've been able to develop and launch over the last period Atria, which is our complete control room solution. That's a software solution, and we developed some hardware, AV over IP hardware, to complement that, which is a novel product family called Allego. So that has given us the ability to move video around, that's the software angle, and to provide that video in lots of different sort of formats, some of which are great locally, but some of which are highly compressed and appropriate for going over wider networks. And that's where your COVID thing comes in. You might not want to be absolutely there. You might want to be in an associate in a adjacent room, or even a different building, or even off, in a field with a laptop.
Talk about that for a second because Atria is the software piece that lives within Allegro, and that's what gives you guys that kind of that leverage, that capability to not just be a hardware company, but you're able to leverage the software and evolve it a lot quicker instead of just being a piece of hardware.
No, you're right. That we've sort of really spent the time on Atria as the overarching solution that is the customer facing part, and hopefully that's the bit that they interact with. The fact that Allego's underneath it is great in terms of the functionality they see, but they don't need to necessarily sweat about that.
No. One of the things that when we talk to customers and technology managers that are responsible for these spaces, right? These are the folks that are the IT and the AV professionals that are maintaining and managing these systems. One of the things that they constantly bring up, and that is the concern for security, right?
Yeah.
Not just network security, but a lot of these facilities are in government installations. They're sensitive information. What are you guys doing when it comes to making sure that your systems are secure, and where do you see some of the biggest challenges when it comes to security of these areas?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, networks are often sort of seen as, in some way, synonymous with the lack of security. The openness of a network is seen as a sort of a negative thing, but I don't really believe that's the case. From my perspective, I think you've simply got to design security in from the get-go. So if you are designing a system from the ground up, which is what we've done, you get to consider threat modeling and system level vulnerabilities in the design process. Security is not something that you sort of add in at the end and say, oh, we'll just encrypt that link there so we'll all be happy. It's part of the design process. And I feel that we've sort of taken a lot of advice on that. We've sort of worked with a number of people, and we're pretty confident that what a customer sees, they get authentication, they get secure access. I think those things are designed in from the ground up, and that's the only way they will ever work.
Yeah. Let's talk for a second about the AV over IP portions of of Atria and Aligo. You know, you mentioned before, just because a piece of equipment is over here doesn't mean it has a display over here. Part of control rooms are the large displays and making sure that you can deliver high quality video to those. Talk
Mhm.
about for a second about the way that you guys went about making sure that your customers and those installations have the highest quality while still sending it, you know, over the network.
It is. It's all about. It's all about that. And one of the things that it's good to understand right at the start is that not everybody in all circumstances has the same set of needs, and it's understanding that, and that's one of the things we've really tried to sort of design in to the sort of the Allego hardware underpinning things. Sometimes, you know, optimum means zero latency, lossless video quality, and for that, yeah, you provide fast 10 gig networks, and you know, make sure that, you know, 4K sources are routed to 4K screens, so you get full one-to-one fidelity. Sometimes the low latency or the zero latency is important, but maybe the resolution isn't. So you've got a 4K source, you might need to route it to an HD monitor. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So you maximize the quality at HD rather than at 4K. Other times, it's all about convenience and ability to stream sort of video over wider networks, where maybe unreliable networks. So in those cases, you use higher compression, you take a hit with more latency. Each of those is the thing that various different people in that sort of command and control chain value. And so it's all about, it's not one size fits all. We recognize that different hops in that environment require different video characteristics, and so that's the sort of thing that's designed in. But at the same time, a source is a source. You don't want to have to worry about how it got to you. You don't want to say, should I have the 10 gig one or the 1 gig one, or should I have it just needs to be where you are, and the system has got to sort of take care of that. So, you know, that's what we're trying to achieve here.
Talk for a second about you know, some use cases, right? You mentioned that sometimes low latency is important, sometimes
Hmm.
higher resolution, sometimes convenience. So give me an example of when low latency would be important to you in installations that you've done in the past, and when would higher resolution be more important, or a typical case where that's the primary concern.
So, classic. I mean, if you are using your IP network for KVM into sources, then clearly the minimum network, the minimum latency, so that you get responsive um, 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 feedback from your mouse and keyboard sort of interaction, critical. But at the same time, you may well be looking at a very detailed thing. So resolution, fine detail of text, critical. Latency comes in on things like medical applications of this, where you are, you know, it's part of a surgical procedure. You are looking at an image, and that image is your sort of tools operating. There can't be any noticeable lag in that. Other times, you might have a very detailed you know, a sort of SCADA type, where relatively static image, where it's all about resolution and quality, and the latency of that is less important. So camera feeds, um, probably if the camera's not in the room, the latency is less of an issue, because there's no sort of feedback loop, there's no interactivity. So again, all of those things need different things, and there's no point overkilling everything with just the ultimate premium for everything, when that just makes a system sort of unachievable.
So one of the things that you just mentioned there is, you know, figuring out, you know, what is most important. How do you do that? Like what does that conversation look like with the customer? Is it simply asking them, you know, oh, what's more important, or is it, you know, what how do you get that information out without just leaving it to them, their devices? You know, what are those questions like? Is it, you know, oh, are you going to be doing KVM over the network, or, you know, how do you assess that those needs without asking them directly, because sometimes they don't even know.
That's the key, is that if you've got to sort of be able to cope with different scenarios that the customer hasn't really maybe thought through or appreciated, and so that's really done automatically in the Atria software. So if there is a source, then the fact that it's encoded in a way that allows you to look at it with zero latency, that would naturally be chosen if the window that that source is being shown on is got mouse interactivity. That's the software knows that that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
If that's going out across to a remote operator, and the software knows that there are bandwidth limitations in that link, then clearly it will choose the highly compressed version, but it's still the same source. We can associate them together. We have a centralized database of sources and layouts and things like that, and they can be applied under the hood in different ways depending on what the situation that the user finds themselves in.
Very cool. John, as we wrap up here, talk for a second about the way that DataPath has been able to evolve over the last few years to kind of better serve this segment and the control room operators specifically.
So clearly we've got a long history in the core video wall in control rooms, and really we are able to use the sort of new capabilities of AV over IP and recognize that operators now have got probably the same number of pixels on their desk with a handful of 4K monitors that have been on the main wall in quite a lot of control room installations. So they've got a personal video wall. So we brought our expertise running Windows desktops on large pixel canvases, which is what we bring from the walls.
Yeah.
We can bring that to the operator as well. It's the same core technology, and we add to that the fact that all of these things are in need to have arbitrary connectivity for sharing and collaboration, and that's really where we're sort of adding a lot of the expertise that we've sort of built over many years.
Very cool. Well, John, I'm very excited to see Atria as well as Allego in person. Hopefully, as the world starts opening back up again, we will be able to do that. So until then, how do people connect with you and DataPath?
I would suggest the best way is to do it virtually as ever, and that's look at our website. I think if you go to www.datapath.co.uk, you'll from that homepage you'll see many links to Atria and the whole system sort of software. So hopefully you'll be able to navigate through that, and maybe some of what we've talked about today sparks a chord, and please get in touch.
Absolutely. All right, John Storey, CTO of DataPath. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
For us, for AV Network, go by our website, avnetwork.com, avnetwork.com. You'll find programs like this and a host of others. All that and more at avnetwork.com.